Right now, somewhere, two people are sitting across from each other saying absolutely nothing, and it means more than anything either of them could say out loud. We're taught from a young age that silence is awkward, that it's a gap, a glitch in the conversation, something to fill as quickly as possible. But if you actually trace back through your life, the moments that shifted something, the moments you still think about years later, a surprising number of them didn't come with words at all. They came wrapped in quiet. Today we're going through some of those silences, the ones that actually meant something, and there's a good chance you'll recognize at least one or two from your own life. The first one happens right after someone says, "I love you," for the first time, and you don't say it back right away. Not because you don't feel it, but because you weren't ready for it to be said out loud yet. There's a tiny window, maybe 2 or 3 seconds, where those words are just hanging in the air between you, unanswered. Your heart is doing something it's never quite done before. You're not avoiding the moment, you're standing inside it, completely exposed, before either of you decides what happens next. That silence isn't empty. It's the moment two people quietly agree that something has changed, before either of them has the courage to actually say it. Then there's the silence in a hospital waiting room. You've probably been there at some point. Fluorescent lights, uncomfortable chairs, a clock that somehow ticks slower than normal time ever does. Nobody talks much, because there's nothing to say that would actually help anything. So people just sit, sometimes holding hands, sometimes just close enough to feel that someone else is there. That silence is one of the rawest forms of human connection that exists, because there's no performance in it. Nobody's trying to make conversation or fill space. It's pure presence. Just two people quietly saying, "I'm here and I'm not going anywhere," without using a single word to say it. Here's a very different kind. The silence after an argument, once the anger has burned itself out, but the apology hasn't arrived yet. You're in the same room, maybe even the same bed, but there's this wall of quiet sitting between you. It feels heavy, almost unbearable, like the air itself has weight. But that silence is doing something important. It's the space where both people are quietly deciding whether the relationship matters more than being right. Most people don't realize that the real outcome of an argument isn't decided during the shouting part. It's decided afterward, in that silence, in who finally reaches across it first. If you've ever sat with someone while they cried, really cried, the kind that doesn't stop after a minute, and you didn't say, "It's okay," or rush to fix anything, you already know this next one. Sometimes the kindest thing a person can do is just stay, not offering advice, not trying to make it better, just being a steady, quiet presence next to someone who's falling apart. That silence says something words genuinely can't. You don't have to perform for me right now. You don't have to be okay. It's one of the purest forms of love that exists, and almost all of it happens without sound. Quick question before we keep going. Out of these so far, which one hit you hardest? Drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious which silence people connect with most, because everyone seems to carry a different one. There's also the silence that happens in a car, late at night, after a long day neither of you wants to talk about. You're both just sitting there, watching streetlights pass, radio low or off completely. On paper, nothing is happening. But underneath it, something is. Two people choosing to exist near each other without needing to perform energy or conversation. That kind of silence is often where people feel the most like themselves, because there's nobody to be on for. It's quiet, but it's not distant. If anything, it's one of the most honest spaces two people can share. Now here's one that's a little different. The silence between two old friends after years apart. You'd expect it to be awkward, right? So much time has passed, you're different people now, different lives entirely. But sometimes you sit down, and for a few seconds, neither of you says anything. And instead of being uncomfortable, it's the exact opposite. It's comfortable. It's the silence of two people who don't need to fill the gap, because whatever connected them never actually left. That kind of silence tells you something most people don't fully understand until much later. Real friendship isn't measured by how often you talk. It's measured by how easily the silence fits when you're finally together again. There's also the silence that happens right before saying goodbye to someone for what might be the last time. At an airport, a hospital bed, a doorway you've stood in 100 times before. You both sense it, but neither of you says it out loud. Instead, there's this pause, this lingering look, this strange compression of everything that needs to be said into just being there for one more second. That silence might be one of the heaviest things a person can carry, because it's the moment your brain quietly starts memorizing someone, their face, their voice, the way they're standing, without either of you admitting that's what's happening. And honestly, if this video is making you pause and think back to people in your own life, moments that didn't seem important at the time but somehow still live in your memory, that's really the whole point of this one. If even one of these landed for you, hitting like genuinely helps more people stumble across this and have that same moment of recognition. One more, and this one's quieter than all the others. It's the silence on a late-night phone call, when neither person has much left to say, but neither of you hangs up either. You can hear them breathing. Maybe a TV faintly playing in the background on their end. Nobody's talking, but somehow that silence feels closer than most conversations ever do. There's actually a term for this in psychology. It's often called comfortable silence, and it's considered one of the clearest signs of emotional safety between two people. If you can sit in silence with someone and not feel the urge to fix it, that's not a lack of connection. That, right there, is the connection. So here's something worth sitting with for a second. If you had to point to one silent moment in your life, one you didn't fully understand at the time but still think about now, what would it be? Who was there? What was actually happening underneath all that quiet, even if nobody said it out loud? If this kind of thing, the quiet, overlooked moments that quietly shape how we feel and connect to each other, is something you find yourself thinking about often, you might want to stick around. This channel is basically built around exploring exactly these kinds of moments, the ones that slip past most people but stay with the rest of us long after. Subscribing just means you won't miss the next one. At the end of the day, we spend so much energy trying to fill silence with small talk, with scrolling, with background noise, that we forget some of the most meaningful things that have ever happened to us happened in the absence of sound. Not because nothing was happening, but because everything was. So maybe the next time silence shows up in your life, instead of rushing to fill it, you'll recognize it for what it actually is. Not empty space, but the loudest moment in the room.